For most people, Sun Tzu is a name associated with battlefields, generals, and strategy quotes reposted by entrepreneurs who haven't actually read him. He's treated as a philosopher of victory, a mystical thinker who unlocked the psychology of domination. But that version of Sun Tzu misses the point entirely. Because when you strip away the slogans, the memes, and the myth-making, you discover something far more interesting. Sun Tzu was not obsessed with winning battles. He was obsessed with avoiding them. He wasn't interested in glory. He wasn't interested in honor. He wasn't interested in domination. He was interested in cost, and in a world bleeding itself dry through constant warfare. Sun Tzu became the first thinker to make one truth uncomfortably clear. The greatest danger to a state isn't the enemy in front of you, it's the bill that comes after. People think the art of war is about fighting. It isn't. It's about finance. Welcome to the financial timeline, where money, power, and history collide. And nothing is ever as simple as it looks. To understand Sun Tzu's financial genius, you have to understand the world that produced him. Because his ideas didn't emerge in peace. They were born inside collapse. China during the late spring and autumn period and the early warring states era, roughly the 6th to 5th centuries. BCE was a landscape of fractured kingdoms, each one convinced it could unify the world, each one draining, its treasury trying. War wasn't occasional, it was constant. Alliances formed. Alliances shattered. Armies grew larger every decade. Warfare shifted from aristocratic chariot duels to mass infantry mobilization, requiring food, metal, supply chains, taxes, and labor at a scale never seen before. States weren't just fighting battles. They were running economic stress tests on themselves. Every time a king sent an army into the field, he was taking out a loan against the future. And far too often, that loan came due. Modern audiences imagined ancient warfare as heroic and tactical. In reality, it was logistical before it was anything else. The moment an army moved, the meter started running. You needed wagons, grain, horses, craftsmen, armorers, blacksmiths, cooks, porters, and every single one had to be fed or paid. A campaign lasting a few months could bankrupt a small state. A campaign lasting a year could collapse a large one. But because every kingdom feared its neighbors, they kept fighting anyway. It was an arms race before the modern world invented the term, and it was pushing the entire system toward collapse. This is the world Sun Tzu walked into, not as a philosopher seeking wisdom, but as a strategist forced to solve an economic crisis disguised as a military one. In the West, Sun Tzu is often portrayed as an ancient CEO whisperer. In reality, he was closer to a risk manager. He looked at the numbers, the timelines, the supply chains, the costs, the opportunity losses, and realized something terrifying. Victory meant nothing if the treasury collapsed. Most rulers believed the enemy's army was the greatest threat. Sun Tzu believed their own spending was. That's why the most important line in The Art of War appears before deception, terrain, or morale. War is of vital importance to the state. Not glorious, not honorable. Vital, meaning dangerous, destabilizing, and capable of destroying the very society it claims to defend. The rest of the book explains one thing: how to keep war contained, controlled, and cheap. Sun Tzu's most famous ideas aren't mystical. They're economic. The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. That isn't poetry. That's cost avoidance, the ancient equivalent of achieving outcomes without burning capital. No nation has ever benefited from prolonged warfare. That isn't moral judgment. It's fiscal accounting. The longer a war drags on, the more it erodes the state's ability to function. Speed, intelligence, deception, psychological pressure. These aren't heroic traits. They're cheaper than armies. Sun Tzu wasn't trying to win battles. He was trying to prevent states from bankrupting themselves, trying to win battles. Before Sun Tzu, warfare was aristocratic and honor mattered more than outcomes. Costs barely entered the discussion, but population growth and technological change scaled warfare into something unrecognizable. Status at 2. Standardize coinage. Reform tax systems, build bureaucracies. just to keep armies moving. War became a national economic project, and Sun Tzu saw the old mindset had become suicidal. War could no longer be treated as a stage for honor. It had become a budgetary threat, one that demanded cold calculation. When you read The Art of War carefully, it stops sounding like poetry. It starts sounding like a spreadsheet. Sun Tzu opens with 5 factors: moral law, heaven-earth, the commander method, and discipline. These aren't mystical categories. They're resource variables. He is asking, how stable is your population? How resilient is your economy? How efficient is your administration? How costly is movement? This is risk assessment, centuries before the term existed. Sun Tzu makes one thing clear: leaders who cannot calculate cost have no business calculating strategy. Sun Tzu devotes extraordinary attention to logistics, because logistics are a strategy. When your army is 20 miles from home, you lose the price of 100 measures of grain. Distance multiplies cost. Transport drains treasuries faster than paying soldiers. Armies in the field collapse, agricultural labor, wasteful commanders bankrupt nations while winning meaningless skirmishes. Sun Tzu advises using the enemy's resources not as convenience, but necessity. He scolds rulers who prolong war not for indecision, but for financial recklessness. Sun Tzu's obsession with intelligence reveals his deepest economic insight. One spy can prevent an entire army from marching in the wrong direction. One message can save millions. Foreknowledge enables victory. Foreknowledge is simply the ancient word for data. Sun Tzu understood something modern states still forget. Misallocation of information is misallocation of capital. Intelligence is cheaper than soldiers, and infinitely more efficient. Speed is the essence of war is often misunderstood. Sun Tzu didn't mean aggression. He meant expense reduction. Every day an army waits, costs food, drains morale, burns money. Victory delayed is capital destroyed. Sun Tzu's flexibility, deception, and maneuver aren't philosophy. They're fiscal discipline. Every decision closes the door to a cheaper alternative, and the ultimate waste is fighting battles you didn't need to fight. States that ignored this logic collapsed. States that followed it survived longer. And this pattern repeats endlessly. The Soviet Union in Afghanistan, the United States in Vietnam, empires in World War I. These wars weren't lost on the battlefield. They were lost on the balance sheet. Sun Tzu would have recognized the pattern instantly. Cyber warfare is Sun Tzu. Sanctions are Sun Tzu. Proxy wars are Sun Tzu. Maximum impact, minimum exposure. Sun Tzu believed power came from economic resilience. He wouldn't recognize modern technology, but he would recognize the math. Sun Tzu wasn't teaching rulers how to win wars. He was teaching them how to avoid bankruptcy. States don't fail because they lose battles. They fail because they drain the capital that holds them together. Victory is meaningless if the treasury collapses afterward. The best war is the one that doesn't require rebuilding your economy. Sun Tzu didn't glorify triumph. He glorified stability. He wasn't a warrior. He was a steward, and his message remains unsettling. Strength is not measured by how hard you strike, but by how much you can afford to strike. History doesn't repeat, but if you don't understand it, it'll cost you all the same. If this gave you a new way to see power, money, and history, subscribe. History has the answers, and I'll show you where to look.